Okay, let's go ahead and get our meeting started today, if we could, please. And I'm going to ask Bob Lynn here if he would lead us through the Lord in prayer. And then, normally, folks, we always have our highest ranking military person to lead us in the pledge. And normally that is David Swafford, who is a retired United States Navy captain, which would be the equivalent of a full bird colonel in the Army. But today we have a general with us, and so David, you're going to have to yield today to the higher rank here. So we'll ask Hopper Smith to lead us in the pledge in a minute. And by the way, Hopper, we did move the flag. Okay, I'm sorry. But we'll go with our prayer first. So Bob, would you ask God's blessing on our meeting today?
Father, we just thank you for the grace and mercy that you bestow upon us. Thank you for your Son, Lord Jesus, who came to die for our sins. Thank you for letting us in your presence. Thank you for the liberties that you've given us in this nation. And we just pray that you would give each one of us the wisdom and the boldness to walk with Christ, all us to walk. Thank you for Lewis Moore and the boldness he's taken in the house. And we pray that you would use him and men like him to lead Oklahoma to a bright future and a blessing to the church. We just pray you bless this meeting. We thank you for the food you provide for us. We pray you bless us. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Here's the flag. Salute. Pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me introduce our dignitaries. We have Mike County Commissioner with us here today, Michael Pearson. Please welcome him. And then also, as Hopper Smith led us in the pledge today, we have Hopper Smith. He is in our Guard. He is a Brigadier General on, in the Guard. But Hopper was also a state lawmaker for 8 years before he was activated and had to go to Afghanistan for a year, so he gave his seat up, and Pam Peterson is the one that followed him in that seat. When Hopper finished after 8 years and went over and played soldier over there, and wasn't much play, but at that time I think Afghanistan had cooled off a little bit, but you've been back at least once more, maybe twice. But Hopper left the state legislature with a lifetime average of a 93 for 8 years. That's a tremendous score. And Hopper is a true bona fide conservative. I appreciate him a lot. I've been picking his brain over here as much as I could. So a couple of other things here. Again, we're in our, I want to urge folks, if you've not joined OCPAC yet, please do so as soon as possible. We will be starting next week interviewing candidates, and we'll have, now his name slips me, he's running for United States Congress in the 3rd District, which is the district I live in. And thank you, Robert Hubbard. Thank you very much. You have to understand, I'm an old man now, and this carousel, it still goes around up here, but it doesn't go around as fast as it used to. And so I get these blank moments here, and it just doesn't work very well. But he will be our speaker next week, and we will be busy with speakers running for office virtually every Wednesday, but a couple of them. And March the 12th, we will have Steve Anderson here. Steve was, may have worked under you even, Hopper, at OCPA. He was the person that did what Jonathan Small does now. He's a CPA and the numbers and the budget guy and everything. When Governor Brownback was elected to governor in Kansas, the same year that Mary Fallon was first elected to governor here, Governor Brownback wanted Steve Anderson to come up and be his budget director. Now, Mary could have had him, but anyway, she didn't, and Brownback got Steve Anderson. And I'm telling you, Kansas is kicking it, folks. They're cutting the size of government, they're cutting spending, and they're dropping taxes, and their prosperity is amazing. And so we'll have Steve on that date speaking. And then the following week, We're going to have an interesting debate with 8th Senator Rob Standridge and the fellow, which again his name slips me right now, he's the head of the Homeschool Legal Defense Fund in Virginia. Michael Ferris. Michael Ferris and Rob Standridge will be debating here at OCPAC against Bob Donahue and myself on the 5th Amendment. Excuse me, Article 5, not the 5th Amendment, but Article 5. So we'll hash this out. It'll be filmed, it'll be put on the website, and then we're going to do the same thing the next night on an even longer or more extended debate. The next night will be at the Norman Tea Party. I did not say sooner. I said the Norman Tea Party. And that will be on Thursday night the 20th, and it'll be an hour-and-a-half long formal debate. We'll just do an hour here at OCPAC on that day. So I think we'll have an opportunity to really hash this issue out on the Article 5, meaning what we loosely call a constitutional convention, calling for another con-con. So that'll be a very interesting time. The rest of the time we're going to be interviewing candidates with exception of what we do to help create the Oklahoma Constitution's Conservative Index. And so it'll be a very busy time through probably October for us. I want to mention to you, I again have flyers over here for the Clouds Over America, which is coming up on the 21st and 22nd of February. It will be a Friday and a Saturday. I'll put out a special email if I can get it out tonight. I hope and pray that I can. And I also have tickets for that and the banquet. Now, the pricing is this. All the speakers on Friday and Saturday, it is $30 a person or $50 for a couple or $10 for students. Okay? And that includes for both days. The banquet that night is $30 a person, includes the meal, or $50 for a couple, and I don't think there's a discount on the students. I'll have to look at this. But this will be probably the widest range of subjects of any seminar in the state of Oklahoma this year. There will be many, many different topics that are covered, all the way from the Alinsky involvement in Oklahoma to nullification and many, many other things. So I encourage you, and I've got tickets if you'd like to see it. Our flyer is over here on the table, and I'll be putting out a special email about that. So those are the things that are coming up, and also on the table are some brochures for the Give Me Liberty Tour. This Friday night, it will be at 6:30, is that right, Bob? 6:30 at First Methodist Church in downtown Oklahoma City.
What's the address?
Pardon?
Address?
Don't know it. They send me this and they don't give me the address, so I can't.
First Methodist.
Yeah, First Methodist Church, downtown Oklahoma City. And then Sunday night, it's going to be somewhere else, and I've forgotten where it is.
Ardmore.
Ardmore. Is it Ardmore? Okay. All right. And all that information was in my email. So if you've not seen this yet, I really urge you to see it. And Dan Celia, the financial person, has a radio program on KQCV. Will be actually here Friday night in Oklahoma City, and he will be, I think, hosting or emceeing that meeting. Dan has a huge following nationwide with his financial program. So anyway, at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and get on with our program. And our speaker today is State Representative Lewis Moore. And Lewis, I believe, are you in your 6th year now? Is this year number 6 for you? And I can tell you this, that I've watched Lewis since he was first elected. And this is a guy that has hungered to understand the truth. And one of the things that I'm so thrilled with, he called me shortly after it became apparent that T.W. Shannon was going to be the next speaker. And T.W. went to Lewis and asked him if he would be the chairman of the States' Rights Committee. And Lewis was very excited. He called me up to tell me that day, and I was very excited also, to be honest with you. And I've seen Lewis immerse himself in understanding this whole concept of nullification and states' rights, and study the Constitution and things like that. And I'm just so thankful that this is a burden. You might find that a lot of lawmakers have one issue that's a burden with them, maybe one or two issues. Some of them never have a burden. They're out there getting a paycheck, or whatever. And this is how they vote. how's the wind blowing today, you know? But Lewis is not that way. And also, really proud of him. He scored 100 on the conservative index this last year. And he's just one of our better lawmakers. So please come on up here, Lewis, at this point in time and share with us some of the information you want us to have concerning nullification, some of the bills and some of the things that the States' Rights Committee will be doing and what you hope to accomplish this year.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And my parents-in-law are here, and I'm thankful for them. I'm going to be here with or without me, Charlie, so that's a good sign, too. And my father-in-law, Bill, I know when I first signed up, I had 70 minutes to meet the filing deadline. By the time I got out of the house, it was under an hour. And I called up my father-in-law. You remember this, Bill? I called him up and I said, hey, I need you to pray for me. And he goes, what'd you do? And I said, well, at least he didn't say, what'd you do this time? So I hadn't messed up too many times before that, so I was thankful. So I immediately asked for my mother-in-law Gladys and to bail me out, which she did. Hey, so one of the things we talked about yesterday, if you were able to go to the Capitol yesterday, hi Stephanie, then you heard a lot of this, the plea to come alongside other lawmakers, policymakers who do not have an understanding. And I'm not saying that I know everything by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still on the path of knowledge and in search of wisdom in this as well. But one of the things that we were fortunate enough to do, my wife and my two boys, we went with Dan Fisher to the Northeast, and Charlie was on that trip, and there may be some other people that were on that trip as well, and that was very, very valuable. So if you have an opportunity to do something like that, we went to Plymouth Rock, went to Plymouth and Concord and Lexington, and walked the Freedom Trail in Boston, and it was certainly something I would do again. It was very useful, and that kind of kicked off my my search, because when TW told me he wanted me to do this, I told him there were 3 or 4 people I could think of that were better than me. He goes, no, I want you to do this. And so I did. So now we're turnabout is fair play. He's running for the U.S. Senate. Well, the U.S. Senate's role is to be subject to the state, and we're asking him to raise the bar, raise the standard as the U.S. Senator, should he win, and be beholden to the state legislature and to the people of the state, and protect the sovereignty of the state in a jealous manner. And actually, we'd like to have them have an office in the Capitol so they can be found in the people's house and be a symbolism of their willingness to submit themselves to the state. And hopefully he'll take us up on that in one of the offices that he helped to renovate. Charlie, how about that?
Yeah.
I wonder if he had one picked out in mind.
I don't know.
For that, that'd be good. All right, so if everybody has one of these things, one of the things that we talked about yesterday at the meeting and is the list of bills. So here's a list of the bills that we're going to follow. Today, my assistant is Denise Crosswhite Hater, and I kind of like having a hater. It's not spelled like that, but it's kind of fun to say I got a hater on my team. But it's not me. Somebody that works with me is my hater. So the H-A-D-E-R. Okay. But she's putting together a list of the people that we'd like to have be the Senate co-author on your bill. Your bill cannot get heard in committee unless you have a co-author. Their bills can't be heard in our committees without a House co-author and so forth. So that's important. If you can't get a co-author, that means you're not going to get any support, so why even bother to hear it in the first place? But on some of the things that we're talking about today, these things seem to be fairly controversial to our friends in the Senate, and not very many of them want to jump out there. But really, it's more that they are not comfortable with this. And that's what I was saying the very first thing. We need to come alongside these people and let them know that there are people that are pulling for them, that are encouraging them, wanting them to help them to have an understanding so that they will be comfortable. And once you understand, it's a fairly simple, some simple concepts that our founding fathers had. And once you get them, you start to exercise them. You're exercising muscles and parts of your brain, obviously, that haven't been exercised, perhaps. You can find some strength, and it's your go-to thing. It's like the Bible. The Bible is your go-to standard. The Constitution is the go-to standard, and it's relatively easy. Then you can blame it on that. So we tell the kids, right? You blame it on me, you can't go, because of me, the parent. So here, I can't do that because of the Constitution. I can't do that because of the Bible. So that's an easy thing. If they can't understand that, then we may have some other areas that we need to work.
Or you have to do that because of the Bible, or you have to do that because you said that.
That's exactly right. So they need help. All of us need help. So I have probably 20 people that, and some of you guys are in here today that have helped me and continue to help me, because once, you need constant, not just encouragement, but there's constant questions or concerns that come up. And so I'm going through that series that John Birch Society put out, The Constitution as a Solution. I'm going through that the third time, and it's been very helpful. And I told the U.S. House candidate, Mike Turner, we told him to get a copy of that and go through that. And if he does that, we feel strongly that we can support him in the run. So, all right. So the first one is House Bill 2805. We've asked 15 senators to co-author on the Senate side these bills. I know they're not going to, 15 of them, not chomping at the bit to co-sponsor probably any of my stuff. But Nathan Dahm, who also was on that trip this past summer, is one who would do it. He's got a ton of stuff to write, to co-author and sponsor already. I just ask him at least be my emergency backup. I'm asking Clark Jolly. I'm asking everybody who's running for another race, running for re-election. And we'll see, because it wouldn't be a bad thing if they co-sponsored some of these bills. These are pretty simple bills. These bills are asking for support of the Constitution. So, if they want people to vote for them, and people who show up typically in a Republican primary are people who are typically advocates of the Constitution. But I'll tell you that we're getting to, just a side note, we're getting to the point now politically where the Republican Party has gotten so big, and there are a couple of people on that ballot, with Ms. Barisi being one of them, that they're so adamantly opposed to. Many of the Democrats are switching parties to be able to vote against her, which means they're going to be voting probably not in the best possible manner on some of these other things. Okay, but hopefully they won't even vote on some of these other things but who knows. So that's what we're coming to. So it's going to be even more important as the primary season comes up to encourage other like-minded people to get out and vote. That is very, very important. And we realize how important the few people out of a district of 38,000, and a Senate district, it's 70-something thousand, obviously, but 38,000 folks. I've got perhaps 3,500 people, some of whom are here today, that I know are going to vote. So that's who, unfortunately, in some cases, that's all you have the money really to try to reach and keep in contact with. But House Bill 2805 is the Oklahoma Firearms Sales and Manufacturing Freedom Act, and that assures Oklahomans and businesses that we mean to protect our Constitution now and in the future. And what that does is similarly to the Montana bill and the recent passed and Wyoming bills, that we want to assure them that we mean to be able to manufacture, sell, trade, whatever, firearms, ammunition, and accessories, so that we can defend ourselves should something ever happen, because while our National Guard is ably helping defend our country out of this country, we've left our southern flank open, and they want to put a 6-lane highway down there to help the enemy come up here. So we want to make sure that we're protected. Okay. On a side note, I had another bill. It didn't make the top 8 to do in Oklahoma, and you'll like this, General Smith, an Oklahoma Militia Modernization Act. Okay, is there anybody in here that's between the ages of 17 and 70? Okay, well, they're in the unorganized militia. What we would like them to be, but with the modernization, I wanted to take the cap off of 70 for one, because is there anybody over 70 that might want to defend their freedom? Yes. Okay, so we want to take that because that's kind of age discrimination. And then, all right, that's a friend of mine right there. That I had to leave that on so I could hear the timer, Charlie. All right, so I see you checking your watch here, Joe Smith. Anyway, we would like you have the Oklahoma National Guard, which is is basically an arm of our regular armed forces, but in the most traditional constitutional way, which is more like the Minuteman and not necessarily a standing army, which is really what the Constitution calls for, is us having a really good National Guard and Reserve Force, which we have. Then we have a State Guard, which is deactivated. Then we have an unorganized militia, which is, well, unorganized. So we would like to have some means to protect. And General Smith, I'm glad you're here because you might have some ideas on how we can better prepare those folks. So, but regardless, 2805 would allow our unorganized militia, our State Guard, and even our National Guard the means to protect ourselves in the future, as you see the national government wanting to go to green ammunition and that kind of thing. Okay. Then we have House Bill 2806, and that is the Federal Receipts Reporting Act, and I took that from the ALEC website. I belong to ALEC, and that's the American Legislative Exchange Council. That's that radical group that you hear alarmists talk about, because they believe in the free market system, limited government, and state sovereignty. So that's a pretty radical concept. All right, so the Federal Receipts Reporting Act would include see, there's my time. I wasn't going to come across, I wasn't going to do very well, was I, Charlie?
You just turn it off, I'll let you know.
All right, I'll turn it off. Okay. All right, it includes a task force on management of federal funds. It also is going to be amended to include a task force on creating an emergency management contingency plan to collect and hold taxes ascertained to be paid to the United States government per section X12 of our Constitution, which I got a copy of right here, but you can go online and get that and see how that, even if we didn't have this already in our state constitution, it's something that would be smart to do. And I did it as a contingency plan because as Christians and stuff, we were supposed to be shrewd in how we do, not tricky necessarily, not lie, but be shrewd in how we do it. Soft play it. And so we want to soft play it instead of just coming out and say we are going to stop paying taxes to the federal government and we're going to hold those and pay those as we see fit. No, we're going to continue to pay the taxes that we're told to pay to the federal government, but we have a contingency plan since 48% of our money for the budget comes from the federal government. What if they have another sequestration and they want to shut the government down, or there's a national disaster, or there's a problem with the internet, there's a problem with the power grid, there's something that precludes them from sending the money back to our state for the services that are provided for with that money, because they're really good about getting the money, they're not very good about giving the money, okay, especially without strings attached. So the part of that bill that we had, the other document, which is this 3-page document right here that I was working on last night until I fell asleep, Charlie, I was telling you about. All right, so this is one we also talked about yesterday. The $8.2 billion that comes from the federal government. Okay, 48% of our budget. But you normally hear about our budget, and Paul Blair was one of the people who first kind of alerted me to that you're talking about a $16 billion budget, not a $7 billion budget or $6.8 billion budget. But last year we appropriated money to the tune of $7.2 billion. What they don't want to talk about is the $8.2 billion that came around the back door. Okay, that went directly to the state agencies. It's not managed by the Office of Management Enterprise Services. It's not managed by Department of Central Services. That money goes to those agencies upon proof that they have spent the money the way the federal government told them to spend it the year before. It is also the money that President Obama says is necessary, the reason why they need to raise the debt ceiling, because they got to pay the bills that were generated. Well, those are generated by the state agencies of 50 states, and now they got to turn around and pay those back. Well, we're working in the wrong direction. We need to be, managing those monies, first of all and foremost, from the state, for the state, and the federal government doesn't need to act as a middleman on our money. They act as a middleman, and they get 30 to 70% of that money for overhead expenses. Well, it turns out a federal employee is not less expensive than a state employee. Not that we're working on that as well, but the state employees typically work for about a third of the cost. Plus, 6 out of the 10 wealthiest counties, 7 out of the 12 wealthiest counties in America are in and around Washington, D.C. You can Google that and see that. I double-checked that last night. So the median income out there is like 100, and the wealthiest county is like 121,000. Well, it costs more money to live and work in and around Washington, D.C., and they are here just in the last 4 or 5 years. They've gotten pay raises. You've heard about that. There's more people working for the federal government that make over $100,000 a year than there has ever been. And so when you base benefits off of that, whether it's disability insurance or pensions and that kind of thing, it is not going in the right direction. If we kept that money and then we didn't accept the $2.5 billion that comes from borrowed money on the backside to make up for the fact that they were chewing up so much on the front side in overhead expenses, we net more money in Oklahoma. We would come out better. So the common argument that I hear from my Democrat friends is, we cannot not take that money. That's free money. That's money. We got to have that money. We got to have it to run, to take care of people. People we got to take care of. We're telling people to come here because we've got such a great deal in Oklahoma where we can take care of them. So we might be inviting the wrong people, for one. But that's another thing. All right. So 2.5 billion of that is borrowed money. Well, borrowed money is great-grandchildren money now, and we're working on great-great-grandchildren money. So that's not very good. That's actual national debt money. Even James Lankford said anything over the. I have to keep that close. Anything over entitlement money is borrowed money. And he told me, it's probably been 6 months, he told me we had 18 months or so before the interest on the debt was higher than we would be able to control. So we're at close to the break point, okay? And I liken it to, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Thelma and Louise, when at the end, when they're racing towards the cliff in their car, full pedal to the metal, right? So it's like Thelma and Louise with Barack up there in the front seat driving, and we're locked up in the back seat or in the trunk just screaming our heads off. We can't do anything to stop this thing, okay? We need to take control. Even Chief Justice Roberts, who said in his bad decision on the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, he said states have sovereign rights. They are sovereign. Sometimes they have to act like it. Well, it's not easy to act like it if you don't know enough to be able to protect yourself. So that's one of the things that we are getting people. Our freshman class have a lot of backbone. I don't know if there's any orthopedists in here, but we need people that can give spinal infusions. Yeah, and really back exercises or something. Okay, but so that 2.5 billion, thank you, sir, is borrowed money, and one of the things was that borrowed money is not differentiated from any other taxpayer dollars. It doesn't come colored purple or something like that where we can say, man, that's borrowed money, you can't use that money. It's interdispersed amongst all the money. We don't know who's necessarily getting that money, so we can't attack that particular agency or use of that money. So we need to have a task force and say, okay, we need to control this money. We need them to identify it, and if they can't identify it, we cannot take it. Okay. Then, who in the state is authorized to accept the borrowed money? Do we just, who's accepting the money? Whoever, when you can't, they know darn well we have a balanced budget amendment in the state, and they know that we can't be borrowing this money. So, and then nobody in the state wants to, and this is why you don't see them talking about or hearing them talk about the 8.2 billion. They only want to talk about the 7.2 billion because they don't want to be the ones held responsible for being the ones accepting borrowed money, because they don't have the authority to accept the borrowed money. So that is what we need to, one of the things we need to be holding folks in the state capitol accountable for. Why are we accepting this borrowed money? We shouldn't be accepting it. That's debt money. We shouldn't be borrowing it. We shouldn't be taking it.
Right.
Okay. So who authorizes the acceptance of the money creating debt? Doesn't that go against our balanced budget amendment? And whose leverage does that give? What leverage does that give the world's largest private bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, over us? Well, it gives them all the leverage. We're basically putting a lien on our future with that money. All right. It costs. One of the things we wanted to do with this contingency plan is provide for a backup plan when all heck breaks loose, a way of being able to continue the operations of the state in a calm, civil manner as best we can possibly do it. So that's why one of the things we need to do is prioritize what it is that the state is doing. Okay? Then it costs like $4.3 billion, the last that I heard here not very long ago, that it cost the IRS that much money to process all the individual tax returns and such. And then with an ever increasingly political and corrupt IRS that's acting as a bully against us, we need to be able to protect ourselves against that tyranny. Also, with the states being sovereign, how does the fact that an IRS who can pierce through from the very top under whomever's direction and control and come down to each and every one of us and take the money from your bank account, your business, and actually incarcerate you if you don't pay? How is that sovereignty? And the protector of your sovereignty is the state. So how can the state be the protector of your sovereignty if they don't have the ability to control somebody coming in here and taking you? And now with the NDAA, those people can come shake you down and incarcerate you if they think that you are a terrorist. So, is anybody homeschooled here? Okay, we're not taping it.
We have quite a few potential terrorists here, don't we?
All right. So what do we do? We got to prepare. So so one of the things we were looking at in this contingency plan, you're thinking probably contingent upon what, right? What's going to be the trigger to that? So first of all, since the tax commission and everything is not ready to be able to handle all those things, because we're talking about individual federal tax returns, payroll taxes, corporate returns, and that kind of thing, we would have to have a simpler system of creating taxes. Is it a bad thing that we would simplify this and just go with a flat tax or what's some other ideas? Fair tax. Wow.
Which is a flat national consumption.
Yes, a fair tax, something like that. That would be much more efficient, less costly to implement, that kind of thing. Would that be such a bad thing? No. And we would want to do that in a way. One of my friends, Don Powers, who's a constitutional attorney up in Edmond, passed some of my stuff through as well to check out. He thinks we probably couldn't do that, but that it would have to go into a trust to be able to pay for each and every person's stuff. But we don't want them to know. It's none of their business. All they got to do is give us a tax bill, tell us what our taxes are, what we owe for the enumerated powers portion of the federal government, and let us pay the bill. They don't have to worry about how they get the money. All they should be worried about is that they get the money. Okay, and we would pay it on a monthly basis, however it was negotiated or deemed the most responsible and efficient way of doing that, besides directly. that doesn't seem to work very well, because they seem to have about as many ways to interpret the tax laws as there are taxpayers. So that's not very nice, because they want to help. They just want to help people. All right. So we would have to have some triggers. So some of those triggers, and one of the reasons why I'm asking this, bringing this up, because there may be some people here with ideas that you can let me know what you think those triggers should be. And because it's the duty of the state of Oklahoma and its elected and appointed officials to provide for the health, safety, and general welfare of its citizens and protect against civil unrest. And so it's in the best interest of our state to have a backup plan for the collection and remittance of to the appropriate state agencies, to include our state chartered banks and private entities for ongoing services, and to the federal government for the continuation of the 17 enumerated powers as found in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. So we want to make sure that we're doing our job as a state. And then we can modernize and make revenue collection fair while providing adequate and timely funding of the government. So how do we do that? That is determine a default schedule that fast tracks the schedule in the event of a government shutdown, sequestration, natural disaster that causes 24 hours. I did say 72 hours because in the insurance business you don't get paid on any business interruption insurance or anything until 72 hours, but 72 hours in the real world, a lot of bad stuff happens. If you remember Katrina and anything else, 72 hours without food and water, not very good. So we want to shorten it to 24 hours, okay, or more of disruption of travel by any means and or the following. The CONUS, or that's Continental United States, activation of any military force, state or federal, military attack on our soil or economic disruption affecting our state banks, computer systems or power grid. But there may be some other things that I haven't thought of that you guys think of that I need to have, because actually as soon as we are up to speed with the Oklahoma Tax Commission on the collection of these things, the faster that trigger hits, the better. So we would want to lower the bar on that trigger sooner than later. And then prepare a test that will ensure the accuracy, privacy, and functionality on an ongoing basis, much like a whole house generator does a test once a week to make sure that things functional. We'd want to have an ongoing test, and part of that would be to have an ever meeting, some kind of task force that would be able to handle things as they come up, so that we don't have to wait 6 months, 8 months and have to convene in an official capacity necessarily to be able to handle those things. That's really the primary bill. The others are a Community Protection Act, which protects against Agenda 21. It just says no Oklahoma community or municipality may be subject to laws, ordinances, dictates, or any rule or regulation of any other form of governance beyond the state level without official public hearings and a vote of the citizens of that community or municipality. And if any court were to say that your rights had been violated, you would get 10 times the property value, fine, and triple attorney fees. Then 2808 is the Oklahoma Privacy Protection, and that's a Fourth Amendment protection to nullify the NSA surveillance, which, given the degree that they're way out in front of us on, I'm not sure that how easy that's going to be, but we have to start. No collection of data or metadata without warrant. It's pretty simple. Resign. They have to resign their position of the state. If a state employee or a state elected or appointed or commissioned official were to be found helping somebody other than the state in the collection of this for the protection and privacy and security of the state, within the state, they'd have to resign their position. They wouldn't be able to get it back. They'd face a $1,000 fine and lose the ability to work with the state. And that also would apply to any corporation who doing business in the state. They would lose their ability, and it'd be a $1,000 fine per incident on that. And but I mean, there's the way that they're collecting data is absolutely incredible. So you can only use your imagination now to see that. So, but we do need to try to prevent that as much as possible. And then the whistleblower Liberty Fund, any person or entity that discovers and makes public any form of waste, fraud, and or abuse of federal dollars and brings that to the attention of the citizens of the state of Oklahoma will be rewarded with a 10% award of the amount misused. The speaker had me do a bill. He wanted me to co-author this bill or take this bill about an Iran contractor bill to take on and try to stop people who are helping, aiding, and abetting Iran. But so far, it's been difficult for the people who are even helping me to understand this bill. So since he's leaving the speakership, that may get put towards the back. Then the Freedom of Healthcare Protection Act is House Joint Resolution 1084. That's what we talked about yesterday as well. And that is to nullify the Affordable Care Act, makes the Affordable Care Act illegal within the state of Oklahoma, and provides for fines and penalties as well. And then I had a bill from Pam Peterson that says a House concurrent resolution that calls for regulatory freedom, freedom from regulations from the federal government that are not constitutional. And then one of the House concurrent resolutions that I have as well is just calling for somebody at the federal level to give us a bill, give us an accounting of what it is that we owe on an annual basis. What do we owe you for that year? And then what do we owe national debt-wise? What do we as Oklahomans, what is our share? Because right now they're saying a 6-year-old, a person who was born the year that Obama took the presidency, that person now owes $1.6 million in debt. That's not very good. So we need to stop that. All right, is there any questions?
Yeah. Listen, you talked about the $8.2 billion federal dollars that go directly to agencies that you guys don't get to control or use. I know several years ago the state of Alabama rejected, I think it was SJR 5, one of the federal grasps for power of education. And the state rejected it, and yet they found a way to get the money to the school districts anyway. Is there a possibility that without you guys having control of this, that this money could come in and actually subvert the will of the state legislature?
Yes. An example of that is the Real ID. We had successfully, along with other states, maybe 28 states, rejected the federal government's desire to collect data through the implementation of some of their technologies when you go to get a driver's license. But what we have found is the same thing's happening there. They are using the backdoor method of giving the Department of Public Safety this money in return for them collecting this data. And I just got my new driver's license, and if anybody here has gotten a driver's license here recently, you had to put your fingers down, and so that's data. If you look at the back of your driver's license, there's 2 barcodes or so on there, and that is data that in some cases when you go to a store, they're able to scan that and collect that data from you, and that's going into their database, which means it's going everywhere. And so that's not very good.
And the picture is your biometric
Yes.
facial.
Yeah, and that's not very good. And so we need to deal with that. And the two head people, and General Hopper Smith is not here right now, but the 2 top people in the Department of Public Safety are also National Guard officers. One is a General, Ricky Adams. He's the number 2 at Deputy Chief of Public Safety, Department of Public Safety, and the other one is his underling as a full colonel. So it's weird, but in the Guard, one's over the other, but in the Department of Public Safety, the higher ranked National Guardsman is his boss. So they know better. So it's up to Steve Martin, who is the committee chair on Department of Public Safety. His office is right next to mine, so you can go by and say something to them as well. But we need to stop that.
Okay.
That's not very good.
Bob.
Representative Moore, thank you so much for what you're doing. You know that. I gotta ask, the joint resolution, 1084 at the bottom, it talks about penalties for fines and penalties. Is this the one that's going to a vote of the people on the ballot, or can a resolution actually include penalties and fines?
That's a good point. I don't know that. If it can't, it'd have to be amended, but it is going to the vote of the people in November if it gets out of the House and Senate.
Okay, can a resolution, any resolution between the House and the Senate provide for penalties and fines? Is that possible? Even a misdemeanor?
I did not know that it could not. By going to the vote of the people,
Well, no, not a vote of the people, just a resolution in House and Senate.
no, because they would not have the authority to do so. But this is going to be something that would amend the state constitution.
All right, if that's the case, then the call for a constitutional, or not a constitutional convention, but a call for a convention, Article 5 convention to propose amendments by Representative Bands and Senator Burkeen. It calls for penalties and misdemeanor for delegates that violate the call, okay? But they're just resolutions. Is that a valid resolution then? Can they actually do that?
That's a good point, Bob.
No, well, I'm the one asking the question, sir.
That's a good point. So when we find out one, we'll know the other. Let's find that out, and then that will be used to defeat those on the floor.
Thank you.
Bob, let me have a say at that, because I believe, Bob, they're going to be two separate pieces of legislation. One will be a resolution calling for the Article 5. The other one will be companion legislation to create the penalty or the fine for that. I think that's Banz's plan.
Well, right now, one resolution in the House includes both. It's the call and the misdemeanor in the same resolution. The same thing on the Senate. Within that single resolution, it includes both components. All right? That did catch me by surprise. But that's how it's built right now, Charlie. I read it.
Just because it wouldn't have the governor's signature, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, where I could see that going is getting amended on the floor or something, and then they've got you going, and you vote for the one without the penalty. Then
I'd like to see it down in committee myself, but whatever.
I'm not sure which committee it's going to be actually coming through now. Now, after he knows what we know, he knows. Yes.
Got two fast questions.
Hold it close.
Number one, do you think the House will ever understand the rules on log rolling? I think of my friend Jerry Finn, beats their ears down about twice every year by filing a log issue, and if they just, legislators not catching on, looks like.
It depends on if it's an election year or not. If it's an election year, they're going to run it through no matter what.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I've been charged with not paying enough taxes in 1991, 92, and 93. Under the Constitution, it talks about going beyond 10. You can't go beyond 10 years unless it's proved fraud. Well, they didn't claim any fraud. But 3 weeks ago, I went in and fought that battle. There's no way to defend myself. I don't know who had made my taxes back then. I don't have myself. So, and they had a friend that did the same thing with also. I was told that they've now gotten their computer up and now they're fishing back 20 years back, and that's why they're coming up with that. I don't understand it, but.
You're talking federal government there, right?
No, this is the state government.
Wow.
Who's your representative?
And then your collection agency, they claim on about $25,000 worth of penalties and all that, interest and all that. And then the collection agency sends me a bill that they use up there in Delaware for $95,000. So I'm all fighting the battle there.
Well, who's your representative?
Well, it starts with a G. His wife died recently.
David Dane?
Huh?
David Dane.
David Dane. Yes.
Okay.
Think I ought to get with him.
Absolutely. And you don't go to the tax commission's office. You have them come to his office, and you can meet with them there. But get them up to speed on that first. so we can be prepared to meet with
Well,
them.
the law I've got came out of the Supreme Court. A friend of mine is a referee out there, and then my daughter's a district judge in Tulsa. She wrote me out the form how you ought to do this and how you go about it, and what you ought to do. And that was 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything from them. So.
Okay, well, get with them and then have them meet you like 4:15, because they love me at 4:15 on Friday afternoon.
Say that again, please.
You want them to meet you at 4:15 Friday afternoon in Representative Dank's office. Okay?
That way they'll be in a hurry to get it resolved, right? Okay. I have one other question, and this will be the last one unless anyone else is up here. You mentioned a 10% reward for any amount misused. You really wouldn't want to give somebody a 10% reward for the amount misused unless you were able to reclaim that, wouldn't 10% of what you could reclaim from what was misused. Otherwise, we'd be paying people rewards here and we'd never had anything maybe to get back to pay it with. Is that reasonable?
The money recovered, we
Yeah.
could change that.
I think that's what you ought to consider doing there. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay. All right. Any other, one last question? Anybody else? Okay. Well, folks, thank you so much for coming today. Again, we'll have Robert Hubbard, particularly if you live anywhere in Canadian or Logan County or other counties beyond that. There's about 34, 35 counties in the 3rd Congressional District. He will be our speaker next week. We will be voting. If you've paid your dues as of 2 weeks from next Wednesday, 2 weeks back from next Wednesday, you will be allowed to vote for an endorsement. Our PAC does not give money to federal candidates, only state. But we do make endorsements on federal races. So thank you so much for coming. You can pick up over here the flyer if you would like for Clouds Over America. In addition, Ron brought some copies of the Oklahoma Constitution, the new edition that's out. And also Steve Bias, his partner, is here today. Steve and Ron are the two owners of that paper. I'd urge you to take advantage of getting this paper and looking at it. But don't just mooch off of them all the time. You know, if they don't have people to subscribe, they go out of business. And so check it out and then subscribe. It's only $15 a year. So thank you so much for coming. Check out our things. Also, if you've not joined OCPAC yet, please do so. We've got our membership forms down there on the far end of the table. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Louis, very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Good, I just moved.